Welcome to our first episode of our podcast. And today, on such a special occasion, I am joined by Sandra. Welcome, Sandra.
Hi everyone. Hi world. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. And Sandra, you are a clinical trial assistant and you're a CRA backup. And yes, audience, stay put because I will ask for sure what this CRA backup is all about. And you'll hear actually more from Sandra because she's a member of CRA Connect community and she'll join us more often on this podcast, bringing some real life from the job situations that we'll discuss with her here live. So Sandra, welcome to the Last Monitoring Visit podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here actually.
Sandra, I want to start with knowing a little bit more about you. Maybe we can start with your background. How did you first hear about clinical trials, about the CTA role or the CRA role?
Yeah. So I'm sure my journey it's not quite typical, but I'm very grateful for it. I'm very happy with the journey that I had. And I was first introduced to the role and I'll actually to the entire clinical research world by my mom. She's a CRA and she has been for the last 15 years approximately. And it was
Wow.
always it was always fascinating for me, and sometimes I would just sneak into her office and listen to her calls, look around mostly.
You had a
Very
mentor at home.
Yes, I do have a mentor at home actually, and she also is a mentor in the mentorship program because, I mean, I feel like she has a lot of training with me. And
Mhm.
yes, it's great. The dynamic is very unique. So that's how I was introduced to the role at first, and, well, I actually when I started university I didn't consider this career as an option. Actually, I'm a business and finance major. So for me, it
Mhm.
was just like way too far. Oh, yeah, my mom is a CRA. And, the typical question, but what is a CRA? So I would have to explain, yes, my mom is a clinical research associate and stuff. But while I was looking for, jobs part time while I was still in university, the option to start in this amazing company actually opened up and it was for a clinical trial assistant position. So I was like, okay, I can try it. I can try it. I was always very intrigued for it. And I mean, CTA role, it's mostly administrative tasks. So I was capable
Mhm.
of handling that. And the company took a leap of faith with me, and I've been there ever since.
First of all, having not even a role model, but somebody who can tell you the good things, but also the bad things from the CRA position at home,
Yes.
that's amazing because you
Yes.
have a reality check. You don't have this idealized image of what the CRA role is. You actually can know from the ground experience from your mom. So that's absolutely amazing. And the fact that you decided to go the same way that your mom did, it also says that your mom still loves the job and is still passionate about the job.
She loves her job. I mean, I feel like she is one of the most capable CRAs I've ever met. She's now a lead CRA, and I mean, I've seen her journey all along since she started as a CRA, and then a
Mhm.
senior CRA, and now she's a lead CRA. So it has been great to see her develop into an amazing lead CRA now, and also almost project manager. So that's great.
I also love that you mentioned starting as a clinical trial assistant and also the fact that you don't have any exposure to any clinical operations role when you were studying your bachelor's. And the same happened to me. Also come from a very different background. I come from studying linguistics. And I always had this motivation to be more hands-on in clinical trials or more in research or healthcare innovation because I didn't really know much about clinical trials
Mhm.
back then. But I also started as a clinical trial assistant. And I think it's absolutely an amazing job to be introduced to clinical trials and to the CRA role. And sometimes I think I'm asked this question many times, and I'm sure you must have wondered as well. Is CRA an entry level position? And very often, I think of course, it depends because if it's advertised as we're looking for an entry level CRA or we're looking for an associate CRA, then of course, absolutely, it's an entry level position. But most of the times, you need to have a prior exposure to the role or to clinical trials framework or how clinical trials are being conducted and operated so that you can do your job, basically. So starting as a CTA is an amazing first step.
I feel it's the best way to actually also get a taste of it. Because sometimes you are like, okay, yes, it's amazing. I'm going to be a CRA. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to meet new people. I'm gonna have a lot of exposure to the role and to the entire, community and stuff. And then you get the reality check that it's not like that sometimes, that it's
Mhm.
long hours, tons of pressure, tons of activities, multitasking. And you just get like, okay, what did I get myself into? Especially if, like you mentioned, you get your first job as a CRA sometimes and you do
Yeah,
not know exactly what to expect. So I feel like a CDA role, it's great. I have coworkers that have all only decided to be CTAs, and I mean, they never made the transition to CRAs because it was not in
hmm,
their plans, and that's totally okay. But I feel like
absolutely.
if you know what a clinical research does firsthand, you can decide if you take that step or if you just prefer to stay back and have a different role or a different perspective. Yes.
Many of our members, when they join the community, they ask me, can I have some internship program or can I do some volunteering that I can get exposed to the CRA roles? And I always say, why would you take an internship that most often will not be paid when you can take a year as as a CTA and you get exposed to the job? You learn a lot about how to do the job, and at the same time, you get paid.
Yes. And it's
Why?
great.
Exactly. And many, as you said, many stay as CTAs for a longer term. So I would say that another advantage to the CTA role is that you don't get to travel. And many of us,
Yes.
I've seen many CRAs who at a certain point, maybe when they get into motherhood or maybe when they get later in life and they have different priorities, they shift into a CTA position, a senior CTA position, or a lead CTA position, or a TMF owner position,
Mm.
just because of that office or home based aspect of the role. So, Sandra, what was your first impression of the job? Let's say the first day that you started as a clinical trial assistant, what were your first thoughts? What impacted you the most? What did you think?
Let's start reminiscing about that day. I was actually full of doubts. I was a doubt ball, a giant doubt ball, because I did not know if it was going to be for me. Like I mentioned, I
Mm,
come from a very different background. So I was like, okay, is this a good fit for me? Am I going to do great? Do I need maybe like medical background? I actually have 1 year of med school in my back, but I feel
mhm.
like that's not enough. Sometimes you do need a little bit more, especially for studies. So it was a day full of doubts and also full of training. I I did like 5, 6 trainings in different stuff, CRFs, for instance, just to check. Also TMF. Most of
Mm,
the TMFs nowadays have tons of trainings. Like there's one training
yeah.
inside of another training inside of another training. So it was like 3 or 4 different trainings that I had to take. It was a very packed day, but when I started just like working in the role, my role consisted in basically giving support to the CRAs that I have with all the regulatory documentation, uploading it to the
Mhm.
TMF, attending calls, providing maybe updates in case my CRA was absent or had like a crossing in her schedule. So I had to learn
Right.
how to do all that. Yes. And my
Yeah.
bosses were very understanding of this and supportive throughout this process. I was still a university student, so
Hmm.
they were very nice to me in this aspect. And because I was afraid, and I'm not ashamed to say it, like I was completely afraid and full of
Hmm.
doubts and saying, is this gonna be for me? Is this gonna work out? And I'm grateful to say that it did.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I think your experience sort of is similar to mine on my first day because I also remember my first CTA role was at Icon and we were in the Barcelona office. And I
Hmm.
remember that Icon's office in Barcelona is a little bit at the end of the city, a bit on the outskirts. Barcelona is very small if you have been. So you basically can walk everywhere. But to the Icon office, I really could not walk because it was really on the outskirts. So I remember going on the first day and Icon had not a policy, but sort of a habit to take a picture on your first day of joining the company. And I still
Sure.
have that picture as the baby CTA. I was also 24. I'm so excited, but you kind of see the excitement slash
In your face.
terrified.
Yes. I
Do
feel
you have a picture too?
I do. But like I took myself my picture. I mean, I'm home based. So I
Right.
was okay, I'm gonna document because I was very
Uh-huh.
excited. And I do have a picture. I think I do have a picture, yes.
You need to share that with the community because it's so nice sometimes to just look back at when you started and it reminds you of how you were and the knowledge that you had and the experience that you had and how far along you've come as well, especially because this is a very specialized niche. And the fact that you were so terrified on the first day, that I was terrified on the first day, it only tells that we didn't have any exposure prior to that first day to the role. Back then, I didn't have podcasts such as like this one that speak about clinical trials. I didn't have an Instagram page that would speak about the day-to-day activities of a CRA. Now we have more CRAs who are sharing their daily activities on social media. You have LinkedIn profiles, you have a lot of groups and resources and knowledge that you can get prior to your first day on the job. But back then we did not have anything. So we were terrified.
Yes, that's something that I discuss with my mom often. She always mentions that, oh my God, like 15 years back, this would have been great when I was still a study coordinator. It would have been great to have a community that gives me
Mm,
support, a little bit more of knowledge on how the role is, what to expect, what to do, what not to do. Yes, I feel
mhm,
like having the community as a backup and also as a support system, it's such a
mhm.
great opportunity to have.
I'm really glad that it serves that purpose because that's the whole purpose of the community. But now, Sandra, it's time to ask you that question. What is this role, CTA/CRA backup? Because I'm very curious about what
Yes.
is a CTA/CRA backup? Why not CRA? Tell me a bit more. Give me a bit of
Yes.
insight.
So it's
Mhm,
quite straightforward. I am a CTA. I do activities as a CTA. I still upload
mhm,
documents to my trimester file. I check with my CRAs that I have because I'm not work alone. I'm working with other teams from different countries. But I'm
mhm,
also serving as a CRA backup, which means I am backing up my CRAs in case they can do or they can assist a meeting, an SIV, a COV, a monitoring visit. And sometimes I do perform those activities, meaning
mhm,
maybe, for example, an study. We have a new study. And in this study, we have the lead CRA, we have a CRA and, different levels. And then there's me. And sometimes one of my CRAs, for example, has a monitoring visit in Argentina and then also in Mexico. So they can divide into
mhm.
two. They cannot be in both places at the same time. So they say, okay, Sandra, you take Argentina and I'll take Mexico. I join
Interesting.
Argentina and I monitor Argentina and I prepare the reports and I prepare the follow up letters and all because, of course, I was in the visit. So, yeah. And I feel like it's a great way for me to have even more firsthand exposure to the role
Great.
and to kind of practice what being a CRA is. I'm not fully on my own. I still have a lot of support from different CRAs, different
Mhm,
level CRAs, but I do get a taste of what it is to be a CRA on my own. It's been great. For that, I've had to, of course, certify myself in monitoring for clinical trials. I did that last year. So since then, I started taking on this like more in-depth role.
mhm.
And now I'm backing up 3 different studies right now on top of my
That's
responsibilities
amazing.
in a CRA. Yes, so that's actually a great opportunity that my bosses came up to and they were like, okay, we know you want to keep growing in this path. We know you want to become a CRA one day. And I feel like it's great for you to have the opportunity to do that. So you could
Yeah.
start as a CRA, back up. And I was like, okay, I take it.
Yeah.
Because I'm very grateful for every opportunity I get.
That's an amazing opportunity because sometimes you don't have the chance to be exposed to the CRA activities, even as a clinical trial assistant. Because as you
Mhm.
said, you can be uploading documents to the ETMF, you can do quality checks of the documentation, but sometimes you don't get to do any monitoring visit, even shadowing until you get to be promoted to that role. But
Exactly.
maybe you don't like it. Or maybe
Mhm.
when you are promoted or changed, I don't even want to say promoted because it's not a hierarchy, right?
Yes.
Or you don't
More
have
like a
CTAs
ladder.
and then CRAs. Exactly. So when you get changed into a CRA position, sometimes you are dumped on you with 3 clinical trials with 17 sites, and then you start traveling right away. And that's a lot. And it sounds that you have that balance where you're
Mhm.
starting to travel and to monitor on site, but at the same time, you still have your CPA job that allows you to be at home and do your supporting activities from the office or from home because you're remote based. And
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I feel like it's a great opportunity also. Well, in my case, it's different. I do want to make that transition, but I feel
Hmm.
like if maybe I'm putting, myself into the mind of someone who is still doubting if they want to do the change, it's great
Right.
because you have the certainty that you're going to go home again and you're going to be a CTA again and you can contemplate the decision. Okay, do I want this for myself moving forward? Do I really want to, travel? Do I want to have different monitoring visits throughout the week?
Mhm.
Maybe having two, three, four, and doing three, five, six reports for different studies for different things. Do I want to do this? It's a great way to kind of balance it and to
Yeah.
decide if you really want to take on that leap.
You basically have a taste before having to buy it.
Yes, I have my 30 days trial with Spotify, and yes, that's great.
I'm really glad that you have these environments. So often we don't get to have that opportunity. Most of the times, I really encourage all of our aspiring clinical research associates in the community to ask if they can support the CRAs, the current CRAs in the company, to ask if they can get one task per week that they
Yes.
can give help and see and shadow how the CRAs are doing their activities. And the fact that your study manager has trusted you with those activities, seeing the passion that you have or seeing the motivation that you have, I'm really happy that you have that. But Sandra, so every journey, right? Like
Mhm.
every role, CRA included and CTA included, we have challenges. We speak about many challenges. We speak about the traveling part. We speak about communication with sites part. We speak about the relationship with the sponsors challenges. We speak about so many software tools that we need to keep track of. But when I say to you, Sandra, what's your biggest challenge on the role or on the job right now? What comes to mind?
I feel like multitasking, but in a
Mm-hmm.
specific focus. Meaning, of course, you now that have a bigger role, you get more responsibilities, or once you enter fully on the role, you get more tasks to do. But it's not so much on the quantity of tasks, it's more of a self reflection on how to do those
Mm-hmm.
tasks. That's
Mm-hmm.
complicated. Stay with me, people. So it's like I get a lot of tasks to do. And of course, you want to do it as best as you can. You want them to do
Yeah.
perfectly, to everyone to say, how amazing you did, Sandra. You did great. This is the best report I've ever written. But it's not going to be like that sometimes.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're going to feel like you did your best and all you receive is like, thank you. And you get so discouraged and you get like, oh my God, so that's not
Yeah.
best. Okay, I need to put even more pressure on myself and I need to wake
Mhm.
up even earlier and I need to do this way more quickly. And I'm going to show everyone that I can do it. And sometimes it's
Basically,
not
you
like
beat
that.
yourself up.
Yes, you beat yourself up and you make yourself so small, like a tiny, tiny thing.
Mm,
And it's not like that sometimes. You can be, I mean, you can do all the things that you want, but you have to take into consideration that you need to rest, that you need to focus on yourself too, that you have times and hours to work, and that you can take time for yourself. You can go out, go on a walk, you can
mhm.
cook your own lunch, you can cook your own dinner. And that's not taking time of your job, and that's not making you a worse employee or the worst CRA in the entire world. That's being human. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
one of the challenges that I have because sometimes I do put a lot of
Yeah.
pressure on myself. I get very stressed. And I feel like it's one of the things that has happened to every young CRA, every young CDA that's joining and that they have the need to prove themselves. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. You have to do your best, and
Mm.
that's you're doing great. So it's basically that.
It's a very common challenge of the CRA role specifically because most of the times you will have at least 10 tasks that you need to perform at the same time.
Yes.
And the challenge is to not end in burnout by not knowing which thread to pull first, where to go next, how do you start? Because you have 10 things that you need to perform right now. And
Mm,
how do you prioritize? How do you choose? And that's a huge topic that I want to speak about on this podcast at some other episode. How do you take those well being, those good practices that will ensure that while you still perform on the job and while you still complete the task that you must complete because it's your job and it's your responsibility, at the same time, you compensate it with a break, a coffee, a walk downstairs, maybe if your dog, if you have, and if you don't, and you have cats like me, you just go for a walk and buy flowers for yourself.
Yes.
There's a balance that you can do that will avoid reaching burnout, which is one of the biggest challenges or burdens that a CRA can end up in. And there's been a lot of trying to raise awareness about this issue that CRAs end up in burnout. And it's not because of, how many clinical trials you have to monitor. It's because with those 3 clinical trials, it comes with 17 sites that you need to monitor, and every single site comes with 10,000 activities and tasks that you need to do today. The burnout comes with, do you have a set of tools that you can apply today, and how to get those 10 tasks that you have that are due today also? Do you have
Yes.
them completed, and do you have them prioritized, and at the same time in a balanced manner?
Exactly.
Sandra, you host a tips and hacks section on CRA Connect community, and I love it because you're very practical. You're so passionate and motivated, and every tip, every hack that you learn from your own experience, you share it with the clinical research professionals every single week. Now, I want to know, what's your favorite hack or your favorite tip that you can share with us?
Right now, I can share one that I actually got from one of the comments
Mhm.
in the last Tips and Hack Friday section that I got. So it was, I'm just starting to write monitoring reports, right? So it's been like 6, 7 reports that I have written so far. And I noticed I have my sheet of paper when I write notes. And one member of the community suggested, why don't you try spreadsheets on Excel? And I was like, that's brilliant.
Mhm.
It's a great idea. It never crossed my mind. I was like still in the caveman age with my paper and my pencil. And she was like, I started doing that. And, I still have the sections, but you are also typing down those in your computer. So when you write your report, you can just copy and paste. And I was like,
Yeah,
that's brilliant. So I'm going to put that on practice. Thank you
that
to that
is
valuable
a
community member.
As that's what the communities are for. All of us have different ways that we've taught ourselves, or different tips that we've taught ourselves from experience. But so
Totally.
often you don't have the time to think, how am I going to get these tasks that I'm doing more efficiently? What tip can I apply to myself? Sometimes you don't have space for that or time for that, because you need to already think of what is the next task you do. So having others in the community or other colleagues that are on the same journey as you tell you, well, Sandra, that's an amazing hack. Have you tried this? And then it
Yes.
turns it all around, and it's amazing. It changes your day.
The back and forth is just great. And I feel like the space that I host is great, not just for the members and like you said, to share
Hmm.
tips and to learn from each other, but also for me, because I do feel sometimes like I would have loved to have that when I started. Of course, I had my mom and she was like always giving me tips and hacks. I mean, I have tips and hacks to share for a mile. But
Great.
I do feel, yes, I do feel like sometimes you do need someone else who just says like, "You're doing great. Listen, I did this. Maybe it can work for you."
Mhm.
It would have been great. And also, I'm talking from my experience. It's not like I have 15 years of experience under my belt. I have just almost 3. So whatever it's useful for me, maybe it will be useful for you. And I also can receive feedback from more experienced
Mhm.
CRAs or different professionals from different areas who can provide me with tips, hacks, and information that it's going to be useful for my
Mhm.
journey. So that's the key point of the Friday tips and hacks section.
I love these tips and hacks exchange between community
Yes.
members. And I also hope that in the next episodes that we're going to do from the podcast, you will also bring some tips and hacks with you from your pool of knowledge of tips and hacks. I think it will be amazing if you could share some with us as well,
Yeah.
because yeah, my purpose whenever we have you on these episodes, I want to know of your daily activities, of your daily tasks, how we can support you better. And I would love to discuss those tasks that give us insight into the role that you are doing,
Mhm.
especially for those that are aspiring to be CRAs or CTAs, but also for those who already are CTAs or CRAs. We want to know hacks. We want to know what works for you, because maybe we haven't thought about that and then we apply it on our daily basis and it works. So I would love to get some tips and hacks from you on this podcast as well.
Perfect. You got that.
That's amazing, Sandra. Thank you. I have one last question for you, though.
Of course.
I know you've mentioned at the beginning of this episode that you have clarity into the fact that you want to be a CRA. So I want to know a little bit what's your plan, or if you have a plan from a career development perspective. Have you thought, let's say, how you're going to get there, or how are you going to prepare to be a CRA? And I know you're already practicing a lot in the current role that you have,
Yeah.
but what's your plan?
Yeah. So that's a great question, taking me into a nice journey. But yes, I do think that for me to actually be ready to take on a full time CRA role and to excel the role, I
Mhm.
need to prepare myself not just in, learning how to do a monitoring report, but also into all the basics that it takes. Meaning, I need to learn how to properly conduct an SIV, a COV, a monitoring visit, all on my own.
Mhm.
So if I can learn how to do that, that is one of the top priorities. I do know that in the community we now have certified, master classes, and I'm taking
Mhm.
them all because I
Mhm.
do need the practical view of it. And I mean,
Yeah.
I've done a few, but sometimes you do need to that theoretical background and the certified
Yeah.
to do that. So you can show that you're ready, that you have done it not just in the practical way and that I've participated once, but I do have a certification that kind of proves that and
Proofs
backs
that
it up.
you've exposed it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, that is one of the main things that I want to do and that I want to excel in the next year, maybe year and a half, so that I can
Mhm.
completely and fully do that transition. And then I do want to maybe do a master's. I've just graduated from university this March. So I'm taking this year to kind of like letting everything soak in. And then I'm going to take a master's. I'm deciding into which area of
Direction.
clinical
Uh-huh.
research I want to go, or if I want to go in a master's with business, and then maybe in the future, another one just with the clinical research world. So it's actually a currently deciding path. I still have a lot of
Very
options
interesting.
and I am taking that with ease. That's basically the path I'm taking.
That's a great plan. And I love that you are on a learning path right now, because that means that we will get to learn from you every time you come on this podcast and you share with us your journey and your progress, because we want to know also for ourselves how we, the listeners, can do it as well in the same way that you are doing. Sandra, thank you very much for being with us on this episode and for sharing your journey and how you got to learn about clinical trials and sharing practical tips and hacks that we loved and we can apply to our tomorrow to our activities. So thank you for being with us, and I look forward to our next session.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who took the time to listen. Bye.